If it weren't for her being our personal ATM, living with her would be unbearable. The words cut through the dim hum of the living room like a knife. I froze, staring at the muted laptop screen in my third-floor office, my own reflection mirrored in the black monitor. My father's voice droned in agreement. My mother laughed in that sharp, cold way I hadn't heard in years. Chloe's high, tinkling laugh rang out, once a sound that had meant joy, now nothing but breaking glass. I didn't move. I couldn't. My chest tightened, and for a moment, all the late nights, all the bills, all the sacrifices made in silence, crystallized into one unbearable truth. I was being used. Every single dollar. I am Natalie Harper, 33, a data engineer in Boulder, Colorado. 9 months ago, after a brutal divorce that left me hollow and raw, I bought a 4-bedroom Craftsman in Maplewood Heights. It wasn't just a house. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, my fortress, a place to reclaim peace and control. I imagined mornings sipping coffee on the sunlit porch, evenings coding without interruption, and weekends finally spent on my terms. I thought inviting my family, my parents Samuel and Edith Harper, and my older sister Chloe, would bring warmth, laughter, and perhaps some semblance of a family I had lost. I wanted closeness, companionship, a home alive with love rather than the echo of my own footsteps. That fantasy shattered faster than I could process. Within weeks, I realized I had become the financial backbone for 3 adults. The mortgage, my responsibility, utilities, groceries, property taxes, insurance, mine. Mom's obsession with organic, gluten-free, premium everything drained my bank account weekly. Dad lounged in his recliner for hours, grumbling about cable shows while turning a blind eye to the expenditures piling up around him. Chloe, my sister, the artistpreneur, needed constant funding for her brand, Glora Goods, website redesigns, product photography, farmers market stalls, expenses I footed for projects that rarely returned a penny. Nat, can you send the $1-800 for the photographer? He's only available next week, Chloe said one evening, her voice casual, as if asking for money were like requesting a cup of tea. I'll check the budget, I replied, already knowing the answer. It's just for the family. It's our future, she insisted, a faint edge of exasperation creeping in. I let out a sigh and returned to my laptop. My sanctuary was no longer mine. It had become a command center for their indulgence. Every financial transaction, every late-night expense, every urgent request was a thread pulling me tighter into a web of obligation I hadn't agreed to. I coded through nights, fueled by coffee and frustration, only breaking for the orchestrated family dinners that were exercises in passive-aggressive theater. Did you see the bill for the steakhouse, Nat? That's excessive, Dad would murmur, eyes glued to his news show. It's Mom's preference, I'd reply, chest tightening. And so it went. The quiet I had craved in my home had to be earned, wrested from chaos, and even then, it was fleeting. Their expectations were endless, and the sacrifices they demanded were framed as normal, as deserved. Every time I considered asserting boundaries, I hesitated, haunted by guilt and memories of childhood compliance. The smart one provides, doesn't complain, sacrifices for others. I began documenting everything, receipts, statements, and patterns of spending. I cataloged Chloe's constant withdrawals for her business, noting the recurring, unauthorized transfers from my account. Every indulgence my parents supported, every luxury item they feigned ignorance about, all pointed to the same brutal conclusion. They didn't just rely on me, they relied on exploiting me. That first moment of clarity, hearing them dismiss me as a cash source, was devastating. But it was also the spark that ignited a plan. I realized that to reclaim my life, I needed to see everything, understand everything, and prepare to act. My sanctuary had been violated, my trust abused, and now I had to turn the tools of my profession, data, observation, logic, against those I once loved. This was only the beginning. The walls of my home, once a refuge, had revealed themselves to be a prison funded by my own generosity. And I was about to reclaim control, piece by piece, from the people who had turned family into a ledger. I couldn't shake the words from that overheard conversation. If it weren't for her being our personal ATM, living with her would be unbearable. Chloe's laugh, shrill and casual, echoed in my mind, layered over my parents' agreement, and it was like ice had been poured into my chest. I sat in the dim glow of my office lamp, heart hammering, staring at my own reflection in the monitor. Every sacrifice, every dollar, every late-night hour spent coding and paying bills suddenly had a new, ugly context. It wasn't care, it wasn't love. It was deliberate exploitation. I pressed my palms against the desk, trying to steady my breathing. The rational part of me, the engineer, started scanning the patterns. Why had Chloe insisted on urgent transfers for her brand? Why did my parents act blind to the bills piling up for organic groceries, luxury items, and extravagant dinners? The pattern was emerging, sharp and undeniable. It was coordinated, and I was the target. The next morning, I started quietly observing. Every delivery that arrived at the doorstep, every new charge on the house account, I cataloged mentally and then began recording on paper. Chloe had been siphoning money from the house account for Glora Goods LLC, labeling each withdrawal as a consulting expense. The sums weren't trivial. $800 here, $3,000 there, repeated every month for a year. My stomach turned as I realized the total easily exceeded the tuition for my entire master's program, and my parents, as authorized users, were either knowingly complicit or obliviously enabling it. I bought a small, discreet voice recorder and placed it behind a framed photo in the living room. I installed a motion-activated camera above the entryway and tucked a micro-surveillance sensor near the desk in Chloe's studio corner. Everything she touched, every transaction she initiated, every delivery she received would now be captured, time-stamped, and unalterable. I even set up a hidden spreadsheet on my laptop, noting dates, amounts, vendors, and delivery tracking numbers, building a living record of their actions. "Mom, can you believe this? I just saw a new shipment from Neiman Marcus," Chloe said casually one afternoon while scrolling her phone in the living room. "Oh, that's fine. It's just what she's giving us," Mom replied lightly, as if flaunting her ignorance. I leaned back silently in the shadows of the stairwell, listening, noting. They had no idea I was actively tracking, analyzing, and reconstructing the full scope of their exploitation. Every word, every gesture, every transaction now served as data points in the case I was quietly building. The cognitive dissonance was suffocating. The people I had trusted, the family I had invited to share my sanctuary, were operating with precision to drain me. By day 3, patterns became indisputable. Each consulting fee Chloe invoiced to the house account aligned perfectly with her social media updates about Glora Goods launches, new product photography, and studio rentals. The more I watched, the more calculated it seemed. It wasn't casual overspending or naivete, it was a deliberate plan. My parents smiled, ate the expensive groceries, and nodded at her announcements, never questioning a single transfer. I began rehearsing conversations in my head. How would I confront them? Could I remain calm while my chest burned with betrayal? The rational, meticulous engineer in me knew that confrontation without evidence would be wasted, that anger would only give them time to cover tracks or manipulate the narrative. I needed proof, not drama, and I was determined to capture everything without alerting them. That night, I sat alone in my office, reviewing the first set of audio clips. Chloe's voice, light and unconcerned, detailed her plans, oblivious to the fact that every word was now an incontrovertible record. Mom chimed in with encouragement, praising her creativity, while Dad added the occasional approving grunt. The contrast between their cheerful coordination and my growing understanding of their deception was jarring. I felt a surge of clarity, a cold, relentless focus. I would document every transaction, every conversation, every indulgence, and I would understand the full scope of their plan before taking any action. By the end of the week, I had a full array of evidence: invoices, audio recordings, delivery logs, and a growing spreadsheet that quantified their exploitation in precise numbers. Sitting there, watching Chloe's phone buzz with another order, I realized that the family I had welcomed into my home had been operating as a systematic, coordinated drain on my resources from day one. The emotional weight was enormous, but so was my resolve. I was no longer just a passive provider. I was an observer, a recorder, and quietly, a strategist. Every move I would make next would be built on irrefutable evidence, and every action they took had already been captured. And for the first time since the divorce, I felt the faintest flicker of control returning. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing to reclaim everything they had taken, starting with a proof that would expose the truth. I knew confrontation would be a minefield, but there was no turning back. I reached out to Monica Blake, my old university collaborator, now a sharp, no-nonsense attorney. She didn't waste a second on sympathy. "Show me everything," she said. I laid out the spreadsheet I had meticulously built. Every transaction, every delivery, every consulting fee Chloe had invoiced to the house account. I presented Glora Goods LLC registration, bank statements, and the carefully cataloged audio recordings of the family discussing their plans. Monica's eyes narrowed, but there was a glint of approval. "This is airtight," she said. I spent the following hours reviewing, double-checking, color-coding each entry, ensuring every claim could be proven, time-stamped, and irrefutable. Each number, each delivery record, each line in the ledger was a piece of the puzzle. I could feel my pulse quicken with every match between Chloe's social media announcements and the unauthorized transfers. The clarity was intoxicating, but beneath it was a cold, simmering anger. Every smile, every casual remark from my parents and Chloe over the last year had been a mask for systematic exploitation. The night I decided to confront them, I carried my laptop, carefully prepared. I placed it on the dining table, open to the dashboard that displayed everything: charts of monthly withdrawals, color-coded graphs tracing funds from the house account directly to Glora Goods, and a folder of audio clips. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to dramatize. The evidence spoke for itself. "Mom, Dad, Chloe," I said, my tone calm, almost clinical. "I need to review something with you. It's important you understand the numbers, the timeline, and the transactions." I clicked play on the first audio clip. Chloe's laughter filled the room, paired with her casual discussion of the LLC payments. Mom chimed in approvingly, and Dad added his occasional grunt of support. Their expressions froze as they heard themselves. "This," I said, pointing to the spreadsheet, "is the house account. All funds were supplied by me. Every $1-800 transfer to the photographer, every $3,000 payment for Glora Goods LLC, every luxury grocery delivery, all recorded, time-stamped, and verified. Chloe, these aren't gifts or incidental expenses. These are unauthorized, recurring withdrawals from my account to fund your business. Mom, Dad, you were fully aware, as authorized users." Chloe's face went pale. Natalie, this is ridiculous. I didn't think." "You didn't think," I interrupted softly, not raising my voice. "You planned it, you timed it, and you coordinated. And Mom, Dad, you knew and did nothing." My hands rested on the table, steady, but inside I was vibrating with suppressed emotion. Every betrayal, every hidden expense, every manipulative remark converged in this room. Mom tried a weak laugh. "Sweetheart, it's not what it looks like. We were just helping. I didn't need help," I said, cutting her off, my voice calm but firm. "I needed honesty. You treated my home, my money, and my trust as resources to be exploited. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a pattern of calculated deception." Dad looked down, his patriarchal posture crumbling, the first cracks appearing in the facade he had maintained for decades. Chloe's lips trembled, words failing her as she realized that the spreadsheet, the bank statements, the LLC registration, and the recordings were physical proof of every misdeed. I took a deep breath and continued. "This evidence isn't just numbers. It's audio, visual, legal records. Every transaction, every conversation is documented. There's no excuse, no story, no reinterpretation that will make this disappear. You can't argue with facts, and these are facts. Everything you've done here, everything you've taken, is visible, verifiable, and undeniable." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I felt the shift in the air. Their previous confidence, their casual arrogance, evaporated. I didn't gloat. I didn't yell. I simply let the weight of incontrovertible truth settle in the space between us. For the first time in years, I wasn't just the provider, the silent supporter, or the exploited daughter. I was the one holding the cards, the one who had mastered every detail, every movement, every number. And in that silence, the confrontation had already begun. I could see it in their eyes: panic, disbelief, and the dawning comprehension that I had been quietly, meticulously preparing for this moment for months. I didn't need to raise my voice. The proof alone was more powerful than any argument they could muster. The moment I closed the dining room door behind them, the first thought that struck me wasn't relief. It was strategy. My sanctuary had to become untouchable. I called Monica immediately, her voice crisp through the line. "We're locking everything down. No access, no loopholes, no mistakes," she said. I drove to the bank that afternoon and opened a completely new checking and savings account under my name alone. No joint access, no cosigners, no exceptions. I instructed them to revoke all previously authorized users, Samuel and Edith Harper. Every card linked to their names was deactivated immediately. The sense of cold, deliberate control washing over me was almost intoxicating. For the first time, the word safe felt tangible. Back at home, I systematically changed every password connected to my digital life: bank accounts, email, brokerage accounts, mortgage portal, even work systems. Each login became a 32-character fortress of letters, numbers, and symbols. Two-factor authentication was enabled, routed only to a burner phone I had purchased with cash. The digital walls I built around myself were no longer optional. They were non-negotiable, impenetrable. I organized the house. My old 4-bedroom craftsman had become a liability, a physical manifestation of their greed. I sorted my possessions into 2 categories: mine and theirs. Everything I had personally owned, from laptops to degrees to cherished furniture, was secured. Everything else, the plush sofa, high-end kitchen appliances, decorative pieces, anything purchased or maintained with my money, was slated for removal. I arranged for a high-end consignment service to handle the items. As the movers methodically cleared the house, I watched in detached satisfaction, each box leaving a physical and symbolic mark of my reclamation. Next came the sale of the Capitol Hill house. The market was favorable, and I staged it flawlessly, ensuring it sold quickly. I funneled the proceeds into secure, diversified accounts, establishing a trust and long-term low-risk investments designed to shield my assets from anyone attempting to claim them. I worked with Monica to ensure every document, every transaction, every transfer was recorded and verifiable. There would be no gray areas, no he said, she said, only concrete, undeniable evidence. Not long after, I received notices. Samuel, Edith, and Chloe had attempted to file claims for parental labor, household cohabitation, and emotional support. They were demanding compensation for services rendered in a home that I had provided and funded entirely. Monica was calm but resolute. "We're taking this to arbitration," she said. "They can't touch anything if we have the evidence, and we do. Everything you've collected, the spreadsheet, audio files, bank statements, it's all ironclad." At home, I reviewed the files one last time, ensuring every invoice, every receipt, every recording was meticulously organized. Chloe had tried to disguise some transactions as gifts, and my parents had attempted casual cover-ups, but everything had been captured, time-stamped, and cross-referenced. When the arbitration notice arrived, Monica filed our response immediately, a scorched earth counterclaim that left no ambiguity. Every cent withdrawn without authorization would be reclaimed, and any claims for compensation by my family were invalid. The tension in the house was palpable, even without them present. The air seemed lighter with each protective measure I put in place. I felt the gravity of every decision, the locks, the accounts, the trust, the counterclaim, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in years: absolute, unshakable control. My boundaries were no longer theoretical. They were physical, digital, and legal. For the first time, I could breathe without the familiar constriction of obligation and guilt. Every late-night review, every spreadsheet entry, every hidden recording had culminated in this: a fortified life where I was no longer just a provider, but a protector of my own future. The house, the accounts, my privacy, and my sanity were now entirely mine, and anyone who tried to challenge that would face an immovable, meticulously prepared defense. And in that calm, cold satisfaction, I realized the truth I had long suspected. Freedom isn't given. It's constructed, defended, and sometimes fought for with ruthless precision. My next steps were clear, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the exhilarating weight of complete autonomy resting squarely in my own hands. After the arbitration, the house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. The tension that had clung to every corner, every wall, every echo of footsteps was gone. For the first time since my divorce, I could breathe without measuring the cost of every action, every thought, every dollar. I was finally free, completely in control of my space, my finances, and my life. I focused on myself first. I carved out time each morning to run through the crisp streets of Boulder, past quiet cafes and antique shops, letting the cold air strip away the residue of anxiety and obligation. I began cooking for myself again, experimenting with flavors that weren't dictated by anyone else's preferences. No organic only, no expensive indulgences, just meals that made me feel alive and nourished. Even a simple omelet felt like a declaration of ownership, a ritual in reclaiming my autonomy. The next step was my mind. I booked sessions with Dr. Evans, a therapist whose steady presence grounded me. We worked through years of ingrained guilt, the compulsion to provide at all costs, the unspoken rules that had kept me trapped in my parents' and Chloe's expectations. Boundaries aren't walls, she told me. They're the most important gift you can give yourself. I had understood this intellectually, but now I was learning it emotionally, feeling it with every small act of self-respect. I also created a private, anonymous blog, a place to dissect and analyze the dynamics I had endured. I wrote about emotional economies, performative poverty, and the psychological toll of being treated as a resource rather than a person. It wasn't therapy. It was a study, a clinical record of exploitation and recovery, transforming trauma into insight. I wasn't exposing names, but the experiences resonated. Each post was precise, analytical, and unapologetically honest. Socially, I re-entered the world cautiously. A neighbor, Claire Donovan, invited me to a book club, 90% wine, 10% reading. My old self might have declined, still wary of connection, still burdened by fear of intrusion. But I went. I laughed, I talked, I drank cheap wine, and I realized the joy of unmonitored, uncomplicated human interaction. No agendas, no calculations, no debts owed, just presence. Of course, my family tried again. Texts, emails, even attempts at legal maneuvering reached me from new addresses. Chloe claimed theft of her studio equipment. My parents sent messages of contrived apology. I did not read them. I forwarded everything to Monica, blocked numbers, and ignored the attempts. Every intrusion was met with silent, unyielding boundaries. For the first time, they had no leverage, no power, no access. Weeks later, I heard through my network that my parents and Chloe were living modestly, stripped of the comforts they had once treated as rights. Their choices had real consequences now, and the reality of accountability was setting in. I felt neither triumph nor pity, only a quiet satisfaction in the balance that had been restored. The world was no longer dictated by their manipulation. It was my own to navigate. Professionally, recognition followed. My work at Northfall Dynamics flourished without interference or stress. I led new projects with clarity, creativity, and a sense of purpose unburdened by personal exploitation. Every achievement felt earned, measured by skill and intellect rather than survival or obligation. And when the holidays arrived, I finally allowed myself to experience them fully, uninterrupted. The house smelled of roasted vegetables and simple spices, and I allowed a smile to cross my face. To anyone listening, following this story from the start, I wish you a peaceful, joyful Christmas, free from manipulation, fear, or guilt. Life can be rebuilt, boundary by boundary, moment by moment. If you've followed Natalie's journey and felt the tension, the betrayal, the reclamation, I encourage you to like this story and subscribe for more tales of resilience, empowerment, and insight from women who have reclaimed their lives. Every story is a reminder that freedom is constructed and defended, and sometimes the greatest victories are quiet, personal, and deeply earned.